Another business tactics that people use to make a lot of money is called consolidate. Consolidate means combining businesses. So here is an example of the railroad businesses. So we have three railroads here. We have the Baltimore Railroad, the Ohio Railroad, and the Pennsylvania Railroad. And they're all three. And if you want to travel from Baltimore to Pennsylvania, you need to take three different trains. You first travel from A to B on the Baltimore Railroad, then from B to C on the Ohio Railroad, and then from C to D on the Pennsylvania Railroad. That was uncomfortable for you because you needed to unload and load on different destinations, and each railroad had a different rate. So it was uncomfortable for you and also not all that profitable for railroads. So what they do is the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad, they decide to consolidate, to combine and become one railroad, and they become that the B&O Railroad, which is actually what happens. So now you are able to hop on destination A and stay on the same railroad all the way to destination C without having to get out of the train and then load up another one and then paying different rates. So consolidation helped businesses because now they were able to control more land and more railroads and be able to control more fares. But it also helped the consumer, the passenger. And of course, if you are shipping crops like wheat or if you're shipping livestock like sheep, it's the same thing, right? You don't have to unload your crop or your goods from one railroad to another. So this was able to make the United States railroad system a little bit better. That is consolidate. And again, that was another business tactic that they used to try to make more money. As the railroads are being constructed, what happens is in the Great Plains, there's a lot of buffalo. And remember, the Native Americans lived there, and the buffalo was a staple for the Native Americans. They used it for everything: shelter, food, tools, right? Well, the government doesn't want the Native Americans roaming around. That was one of the reasons because the government wanted to construct the railroads. And so what they do is instead of actually going and attacking the Native Americans, they begin to attack the buffalo. This was a destruction of the ecological system. The railroads were destroying the buffalo. That had an ecological disaster. They were destroying the prairies. They were destroying the trees. So it was a destruction of not only the ecology and the government, but also Native American life and lifestyle. Down here, you see the decimation of the buffalo, that eventually it was more of a skeleton type of uh, the amount of the buffalo that were left. In 1800, there were over 30 million buffalo. In 1870, when the second industrial revolution, there were about 12 million. By 1900, there was only 1 million buffalo left. And of course, decimation of buffalo, again, also represented the decimation of Native American culture. So this behemoth, this beast that once roamed the Great Plains, was reduced to a skeleton type of numbers in the second industrial revolution. And then another thing that the railroads actually do are these little towns here. So this is, if you could see here, the city of streets, Universal City in Universal City, California. So this is Universal City back in the 1800s, late 1800s. And these little towns, they start to become known as specializing towns. So each town was able to specialize in making one particular good. And then that good was shipped because of the railroads, was shipped all across the United States. So Los Angeles was able to ship crops all the way to New York, and now New York depended on Los Angeles, and vice versa, right? So we're gonna go back to a map that we saw earlier, and just to kind of give you an idea. So, for example, Chicago. In Chicago, they are producing a lot of meat, a lot of cows, right? A lot of cows are in Chicago's. So they're going into Chicago's, and now they're gonna ship them to New York, up on the East Coast over here, or all the way to California and Los Angeles, right? So now these two cities, Los Angeles and New York, they depend on Chicago to be able to provide them with meat. Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh in particular, they were making a lot of steel. So to make steel beams, to make steel skyscrapers, or to make bridges, cities like New Orleans needed Pittsburgh to ship that steel. So again, they depended on one another, right? In the Great Plains up here, and Minneapolis, they were producing a lot of crops, wheat, corn. So then again, the rest of the country depended on them to be able to grow that crops to be able to ship them everywhere. So the railroads also improved trade system, and people were able to get the goods that they needed and they deserve as well. So that's the railroads and how they form and the impact of them.